There's no...
Welcome to ciplantgo, a podcast aimed at introducing people living a plant-based lifestyle in Japan. For this episode, I interviewed Seyka Mejeur, vegan lifestyle advocate based in California and traveling Japan, then the world, with her husband Brian. Although they do not live in Japan, I thought it would be really interesting to ask about their experience as vegan travelers in Japan and as vegan activists. So I invited them on the podcast after Seyka posted a message in the Vegan Japan Facebook group. The episode starts with a quick presentation of Seyka and Brian's vegan world tour. The discussion then addresses their experience and organization traveling in Japan as vegans, their path to veganism, the most positive and negative aspects of adopting a vegan lifestyle, Seyka's opinion about ethical veganism, plant-based cheese, what "it's easy to be vegan" means to different people, Seyka and Brian activism-related activities in California, their motivation going forward, advices to people wanting to follow in their footprints, veganism in the future, Seyka and Brian typical day back home, and finally cell-grown meat. It was a real pleasure being able to catch a little more than an hour with Seyka and Brian at the very beginning of their vegan world tour. I hope you will enjoy listening to the episode as much as I did recording it. Without further ado, here is Seyka Mejeur. Thank you very much, Seyka, for being on my podcast and taking the time, with this very busy trip around the world, but starting in Japan.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really, really fun to be here and to talk with you.
Great. So, can you very briefly present yourselves? I mean, you're here with your husband, Brian. Can you briefly present yourselves and tell us what brought you to Japan?
Yeah, absolutely. So Brian and I are from California, and we're trying to spread the plant-based lifestyle, spread veganism, teach people about how delicious and fun traveling while vegan can be. And as my friend Twee said, sometimes a calling comes and you kind of just show up. And that's how this trip presented itself to us. So Japan's been on our list for a long time, places that we really wanted to visit, and so that's our first country. Okay,
so that kind of gets directly into my second question, which was why did you choose Japan as a first country? So you wanted to visit Japan for a long time. Is there anything that you are especially attracted to with Japan?
Yeah, it's really sweet, actually. So my grandfather and my whole family in general has always loved the Japanese culture. You know, when we went to celebrate birthdays or big celebrations, we would go to a Japanese restaurant and sit in the tatami rooms, and that was always a really special experience for me. So this culture's always held a lot of value, and Brian and I have always talked about really wanting to come here. So.
All right. So this is actually your first let's say real Japanese experience in the country,
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, that's great. I always enjoy when I have friends coming here, living through them, this kind of first impression of the country. When you've been here a while, it's not like you're jaded, but you're used to it.
Right.
So, all right. And so after Japan, so you're going through 21 countries, right?
That's right.
So I just have the list here. I'm just going to bring it up very quickly so that the listeners can picture your future trip. So it's Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, United Arab Emirates, Tanzania, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Hungary, Austria, Czech Republic, United Kingdom, Portugal, Spain, and Iceland. And then I guess you go back to California after that,
That's
right?
what we go back to. We're going to New York when we get back to the States, and then we'll make our way over to California eventually.
I see. So is there, obviously geography is a big factor, I guess, but what got you to decide on those countries?
Yeah, so we kind of had a few different factors. So we wanted to pick places that Brian and I hadn't been to before. There are a couple exceptions on there, but for the most part, places that we hadn't been to. And then we also added in some places that we were told are specifically great for vegan food, right? So we wanted to go to the places that are known for having a really thriving vegan food life, or people who really like that, so we can share that back to the rest of the world. And then we also wanted to be really thoughtful about our carbon footprint. And so a trip around the world is, when you're using planes, it's rough for the environment, and we care about that a lot. We live a very eco-friendly lifestyle at home, and we want to be thoughtful of that as we are flying. So every flight is the shortest possible flight. We're not doing any backtracking. If something would take us down and then back up, we cut it out. We wanted to make it a really direct flight so we can at least be really conservative with the flights that we are doing.
All right, that's very interesting to me because it's actually one question that came to my mind, but I thought like we already had a lot of things to talk about. And also I think that on your website, you talk about like everything related to the environment as being one reason for being vegan, right?
Yep.
And you also brought a lot of numbers on your website, which I think is very informative and cool, and like probably a good thing to do when you try to reach to certain groups of people. But the plane thing is something that even a lot of vegans take this as being granted, let's say, the ability to fly pretty cheaply, all things considered, throughout the world. And I'm an expat here, so for me, it's been a no-brainer for most of my life as an expat. But in recent months, I'd say month because it wasn't even years, I started to really challenge my belief about this. And so I'm uncomfortable with my future trips. I'm looking into ways to kind of compensate a bit, like whether it's buying carbon, CO2, how do you call those, offset thingies. I don't remember the name exactly. Sorry about that. I'm not convinced it makes everything equal, but yeah, definitely taking this into consideration is probably one of my next kind of ethical or environmental-based kind of value-based thing to do. All right, so that's very nice. And so is that why there's no African countries as well? Going south is really not an option there?
Yeah, so we'll go over to Tanzania. We wanted to add in South Africa, but it didn't make sense for our flights. Okay. And then we thought about Kenya. I've already done Kenya.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so we're not doing Kenya, and then we're going up to Egypt. So, so we're mixing in some of those, some air, but we skipped some of the stuff in the southern.
All right, understood. Nice. I'm sure you're gonna have a great trip. Like 21 countries in such a short amount of time. It's gonna be pretty hectic, but also quite an experience, I'm sure.
That's right.
So how did you find traveling here as vegans so far, like in Japan?
Yeah, so far it's been pretty great. We have experience traveling. We went to Colombia. I was vegan. Brian wasn't at the time. We went to New Zealand vegan, and so we've got a couple tricks up our sleeve, right? Like going to a grocery store and finding the foods that we can eat so that we have a snack bag with us.
Yeah.
And so we found that to be fairly easy. We haven't gone hungry at any points. We've always got some nuts and fruit and rice stashed in our bag, and we found some really lovely restaurants along the way too.
All right. I guess you planned quite a few like eating out options, right, before coming to Japan. So you probably like got in touch with some restaurants and etc. How much, like, what kind of experience? I watched your video, I think in Kawasaki, like partly. That looked pretty interesting. Yeah. And about how, like, what's the proportion of places you already looked up and you're going like, okay, we're going to go here, and what is kind of the random part of your country trip here?
I'd love to say it was all planned because I'm a planner. I love to schedule things, and I'm not great at spontaneity. But we've only really planned Japan. We're looking into Taiwan now. We've got a few things sprinkled throughout, and luckily some people are reaching out to us and saying, hey, we've got something, please come see us when you're in our country, which is awesome because it's so much work to find all the spots to go, and there's so many wonderful places, it's hard to choose. So.
All right, but my question, that was very informative, but the question was more about Japan actually. So you've been here how many days already?
We've been here about a week, 8 days.
About a week?
Yeah.
All right. And so, like, let's say you're eating something like between 2 and 3 times a week. That's me when I'm super fasting. That's a joke. So something like between 2 and 3 meals a day, right? Like, about how many of those are like kind of planned and how many of those are like kind of a bit random, or you're kind of like just looking up like a few minutes, a few hours before you're finding that place?
I'm soothed when I have things scheduled. So it depends on what we've been able. If I had it my way, it would be planned a couple days in advance. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way, and sometimes we get a text message or an email, a couple hours before, someone saying, "Please come here." Or we don't have somewhere to eat for lunch, and so we just, pull up Happy Cow, pull up Yelp, and find somewhere that has vegan food.
All right.
So I don't know if I put a number on it, like 60% is planned, 40% unplanned.
All right. I'm asking this, and it might sound a bit like, no, that's more the question for some people, not like in the world, not living in Japan, but most people asking me if being vegan in Japan is challenging, and even Japanese people asking me that, or expats and just like not being vegan yet in Japan. I think it's really about lifestyle here. And so if you're doing things a bit randomly, and also depending on your social life when you're living here, it can be very challenging because you might end up in a place where there's no options, or there are options, but you don't know about them because they're not yet listed on Happy Cow, etc. Right? So far you've been to which cities?
We started in Kawasaki, then we went to Yokohama, went to Himeji, and Hiroshima, and Miyajima Island, and then Osaka, and then here.
All right, so mostly like big-ish cities, but
or
maybe for
touristy.
Himeji, I don't think I haven't been to Himeji.
So
but
Himeji was a great example. We didn't realize, not Himeji, Miyajima.
Yeah.
We were planning on a restaurant, and then we didn't realize that everything really closed at 8. And we were planning on taking a ferry at like 10. And so this restaurant had all these cool options. I was so excited to go, was closed. And so we just had to find anything that was open. And we actually were able to go in even without speaking Japanese. We, used Google Translate to say, "Can you make us something with no egg, no dairy, no cheese, no fish, no meat?" And showed it to them, and they were like, "Okay," kind of threw some stuff together and made us food. And so that was
cool.
That was last minute. But I will say, to your point, wherever we are, America, where we can speak the language really easily and look things up, and that's really easy. If we're not traveling with vegans and people who are very interested in vegan food, it can be really tough because there is more coordination that has to happen.
Yeah, no, true. Well, I mean, it can be really tough just because of where you are, but also like just the social context, right?
Yes.
Like it's like non-vegan, like let's say non-ethical vegan especially, people rarely agree with you that it's not just about respecting one another's way to eat. It's also like if you're going to eat out where there's going to be a lot of meat around you, or even a little bit of meat around you, it can be very disturbing to quite a few vegans. I mean, it depends. Like everyone is not as sensitive as the other, but definitely it's a matter of values. So it's not the same thing as like you're eating whatever you want, I'm eating whatever you want, whatever I want. What's the problem here? Or for once you could, make that exception. So it's a very complicated discussion. I think the social aspect is the main problem, and especially here in Japan. But here in Japan, you're just faced with like, there's not going to be any vegan options, period. If you just go random places. So I'm very happy to hear you had an okay or even maybe a good experience at that place where you just like used Google Translate.
Yeah.
That's great. It's the first time I hear about that here.
Yeah.
I've heard about that in other cities, but that's awesome. I thought I should try that too.
Yeah.
I had fake that I don't speak the language just to see how it is.
Yeah.
All right. That's great. And have you looked into like stores and stuff like that, or just like limited yourself to restaurants so far?
Yeah, we've gone into the stores. We love the Japanese grocery stores and the health food stores that we found, and kind of going around and getting. And those stores are really useful for, and again, using Google Translate, the camera version where you can put it over the words, so I can at least see if there's anything in there. That we can't eat. So and collecting those things and then just hauling them in our backpack.
But I'm asking about stores because, and it's not like, in case you ever try those products that I have like in convenience stores, etc. There's the legislation around labeling in Japan is I'm not a specialist here, but it's not that great for vegans because they don't have to list things that they don't make themselves, like they buy from other companies. So for example, if you're a chocolate brand thing, right, and you're making, let's say, let's say a chocolate bar thing, company, right? So you're making chocolate bars, and you write in this there's chocolate, but you don't have to say whether it's what's in the chocolate. It's so you don't know exactly what's in it. Yeah. So a lot of vegans think, for example, that let's take one example, the inari sushi, which is like kind of the sweet sushi of a bowl of rice in how do you say, like curd, like the brown one that's pretty sweet. There's actually fish stock in that, and it's not written on the package, right?
Crap.
So if you ever had that, well, it's not your fault, so don't feel bad about it, because it's like natto, for example. You know natto, right?
Yeah.
Like almost all brands of natto here, well, when you buy them, most of them come with like a bit of fish-based thing that's like on the side, but you don't have the choice to not buy it.
Right.
And a few brands don't have that. But even then, and I used to eat that, they use animal-based bacteria to make the fermentation process happen. A bit like, they use byproducts like in wine production, etc., right?
Yeah.
So that's why some alcohol are not vegan. When you are that kind of vegan that cares about that as well, it makes things more complicated and not. And so for tourists here, even those who understand Japanese, it can be deceiving, but not purposefully so, right? It's just like the brands don't have any clue that people are looking for that kind of information yet. They don't have any clue yet. One very useful tool is there's at least one Facebook group that's called Vegan Japan.
Yeah.
And you can just post a picture of the food with the label, ask if it's vegan. And usually people either like me or other pretty knowledgeable vegan and that can read Japanese will answer and say, yes, it is, but you might want to pay attention to the sugar. That's probably not vegan and that kind of stuff, right? But yeah. There you go.
That makes a lot more sense. I had somebody reach out and said that they are working on an app that's specific to Japan that has to do with all the different foods, because sometimes sugar is ground with animal bones.
Oh, yeah. Here it's like not sometimes. Most companies are still using bone char for the winding process of sugar. Only a few companies are not. So here let's say the official vegan rule is like, don't think about the sugar. You're just not going to eat anything anymore, right?
You have to cook it all at home or go to a vegan restaurant.
Yeah, or just not eat sugary stuff like that had added sugar in it, right?
Yeah.
Which is what I do at home, but when I eat outside, I'm not a sweet tooth, so that's fine. But still, I don't pay attention when I get a cookie or whatever, right? Because,
Right.
All right. Cool. So far, so good then. All right. Glad to hear that because, Olympics are coming. And so, I mean, you've done your homework, obviously, but most people, I guess if they're vegan, they're going to do a bit of research beforehand. But yeah, things are moving definitely in Japan in the right direction, especially in main cities. So that's great. Going back to you yourself, and maybe you too, we'll see. What brought you to start a plant-based lifestyle and becoming vegan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an animal lover. I have fostered dogs. I've, spent time at shelters. I love animals. And I started looking into how animal products are made and was horrified, traumatized, mind blown thinking this can't be. There's no way that people who care about other sentient beings, even if they don't like animals that much, there's no way that people could look at this and say, this is okay. And I started looking into it more and just became more and more horrified about how frequent and standard these practices are. And then once I digested that and took it as my own, I started looking, finding out more about the health benefits of veganism and then the environmental impact that veganism has. And then it was such a no-brainer that it became really something that I couldn't wait to share with everybody that I could find.
I can imagine. If I remember correctly, reading on your website, that was around middle school?
Yeah, so
Have you started?
Yeah, so I had originally gone vegan in middle school. And I came away from it during my kind of late high school and college years. I was, at that time, medically required to. I'm using quotation marks because, air quotes, I think I would definitely have handled it a different way now. And so I've been vegan for the past 5 years this time. And, forever.
All right.
Will be forever.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. And so all that research you just talked about that you did, is that like in the past 5 years, or was that like when you were still in school?
Yeah, so originally in middle school, I did it all started because I did my 8th grade project on bovine spongiform encephalopathy, so mad cow disease.
Yeah, I remember that.
And started looking into it, and I was like, well, how are these cows getting mad cow disease? Okay, they're eating cow. What? Why would a cow ever eat a cow? And that kind of started the whole process. So that's when I first was exposed to the animal process videos. I was vegan for a while then, and then, kind of re-informed myself and was reborn 5 years ago, if you will.
All right, that's cool. That's very interesting, a story. And so I think like your website says that you both are plant-based, and that when you met your husband, Brian, he wasn't plant-based. So how did that work out? Because I turned vegan while I was dating my ex-girlfriend, and she wasn't. She's still not, which is not the reason why we split up, but it definitely didn't help. And It was a challenge, and I can imagine still being a challenge if I've ever dated someone who's not vegan or close to vegan. Mm-hmm. How did that work out for you guys?
Yeah, that's a fun question. I love talking about our relationship. So when I first met Brian, I was kind of alone. I was kind of a loner vegan. So like none of my friends were vegan. I'd tell them all about it, but because veganism was like the weird thing, and you kind of maybe not looked down upon, but it's a weird thing that like a special need you have. And I was maybe I would still share my passion with people, but I was maybe a little bit embarrassed about it, or didn't say it with the passion that I feel enabled to share it with now. So met Brian. Brian's from Michigan, where it's meat and potatoes and cheese, and he was kind of like, what is this vegan thing that you're doing, right? So when we first met, we just ate very, very different foods. And we were dating and fell in love very quickly, and began, we were engaged very shortly after, not very shortly, but shortly after that. We were engaged like 8 months after we met, and, or after we started dating. Anyway, and so then we started, we were having these conversations all along about why I'm vegan, why it matters. I think Brian didn't consider himself an animal lover, didn't like animals. Like, he loves dogs, but maybe didn't care about animals as much as I did. And then the conversations kept progressing, and he started really understanding that, you don't have to have a passion for cows to not want them to go through what they're going through and to be paying into that system. So he began decreasing his meat and cheese intake, and he said from the beginning that he we were always having these conversations about veganism. And he would say, I need to do it slowly. I need to decrease my animal product consumption slowly, because if I do it too quickly and then I mess up, I'm gonna have a hard time with it. Yeah. And so gradual is going to be something that will work better for me. And so we wrote, I realized after you asked me that question, we went back and looked at our About Me section, and it does say that Brian, lives a mostly vegan lifestyle. So we realized we haven't edited that in about a year. So he's been completely vegan for about a year now.
That's great.
And it was, so for him, that's how it worked. He started by thinking critically, am I really going to enjoy cheese on this meal? Or am I just ordering it because it's kind of what comes with it? And would reduce it there. Or, okay, do I really need this much meat? Maybe I'll take a much smaller portion. And just really, it happened so gradually that one day somebody asked him if he's vegan too, and he said, yeah, I think I am. I haven't had meat in some time now, like any animal products in some time now. So it was a gradual process for him, but now he's vegan and sharing the message as loudly as I am, and it's really cool to be in a partnership with somebody who is vegan. Having my husband be vegan, I can't imagine how I could have a relationship that means this much to me and not be aligned on that.
Yeah. I share your, I can imagine I would share your feelings of joy if I was in the same situation. I can relate to that. I've been thinking a lot about all those especially romantic relationship issues and questions when it's happening between someone who's vegan or vegetarian and then someone who's not. I read a very interesting book about that topic. You might have heard of Melanie Joy. Yeah, and so I think it's her second main book, the one she wrote after the one that's focused on carnism. She's talking specifically about human relationships and how to talk about it, because it's really a matter of let's say, discussion skills, right? Talking skills and how to convey a message without being aggressive, without attacking the other, and trying to get a win-win out of a discussion, even if you don't agree at the end of the discussion, right? Which is going to be most of the case, right? Like you won't agree on that. And so I'm talking about that book quite a lot whenever this topic comes up. I even offered it. It's not only for romantic relationships. I have offered it to my father, actually. So that, because I'm talking a lot with him about everything related to animal rights, etc. And he's not vegan yet.
Right.
But he's older, and you can imagine that definitely there's more momentum, like cultural momentum and other things that make the change even more challenging. So great. I'm very happy to hear that it is working great for you guys in that sense. Okay. What is the most positive thing that this plant-based lifestyle has brought to you?
So I used to describe that it felt before I was vegan that I had this great passion inside of me that I was kind of ignoring, right? I love animals. I care about the environment. I care about health. I love fitness. I love food. I love health. And there's a huge cognitive dissonance happening there. I've got two passions that are conflicting so heavily. I love animals. I'm paying into a system that tortures and kills them, sentient beings. Those, on one hand, I want good, I want peace, I want love in the world. On the other hand, I'm paying into a system that tortures creatures. And so there's this enormous freedom that comes from knowing that every day I'm paying into a system that furthers the things that really matter to me, that is aligned with my values.
Yeah, and so what, just to put this in the frame of the question I asked, so that means that what you got the most positive thing you got out of living this plant-based lifestyle is like kind of being aligned with your values in your everyday life.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I ask you the same question?
Well, I think it's exactly the same. I would say, like in grand scheme of things, that's definitely that. Each step I walk towards this ideal of what an ethical life is to me and how I envision it, the happier I am, right? But there's always more than one can do. So I'm pretty like kind of the overthinker type of guy. So for example, I talked about the plane travel, etc. But it can be like animal activism as well, right? I'm doing this, but this is because I enjoy it. Maybe I would be more efficient in other activities. I don't know. But I always kind of look further. But yeah, definitely being like walking the talk, basically. I think it's very important to be like living a fulfilling life. But also I became a foodie like when I turned vegan. Before that I loved food, but I wasn't going like to just go to places to try new options. Yeah. Now it's like I'm the foodie. Yeah. And so that's a great thing that veganism brought me, like indirectly. Yeah. All right, awesome. Is there anything negative about this like vegan lifestyle?
Yeah, so kind of coming back to what we were talking about just a moment ago. So society has a lot of people that, culturally and through their whole life have been taught that there is a normal way to do things. And there are a lot of people that when they interact with vegan activism, it feels like a personal attack on their behaviors and their lifestyle and things that they've been brought up with. And that can be really tough. It happens with a lot of people that are personally offended by the things that we talk about and sharing the information that we have. And that can be especially painful when it's people that we really love and respect. So coming back to what you were just mentioning, books about conversation, we're watching videos and doing conferences with Amazing Vegan Outreach. Have you heard of them?
I've heard of it. I couldn't really put a name behind that. But
Alex Bez, I want to say. I should look this up because this is really valuable to look at.
Is it the guy who wrote the article that's on your blog? No, it's not that.
No, I'd love to have him write an article. But no, yeah, it's really cool. They do video conferences completely for free, and they consult people with how to have these tough conversations. So Amazing Vegan Outreach, and I'll look them up and I'll send them to you in case you want to look into them more. But they're really, really cool. We're always investing in how do you have these conversations more? How do you get win-wins out of these conversations so that people feel loved, they don't feel attacked, and they also get to hear some really important information.
All right, awesome. I'm really on the same line there. In recent weeks, month, I've been introduced to Earthling Ed.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, really the best of both worlds because he's like not hiding any truth, but he's able to talk with like people who are working in that industry. I mean, maybe you are not seeing the videos that he's not really really filling it, but I mean, he's really inspiring, and I really love what's his name again? Now I forgot the Australian guy who did this year of silence. Dave Asprey.
Okay, I'm not.
Is that it? You haven't heard of him?
No.
It's pretty well known among vegan activists, and he's also very good with not being aggressive, but really saying the truth, as far as he understands it. All right, that's great. So yeah, definitely the social aspect is challenging, right? Hopefully it's going to get better.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about ethical veganism? Because people can start being plant-based, even 100% plant-based for health reasons. I actually have a colleague who's plant-based for health reasons. So what's your take on that? And also, how would you define it?
Yeah. So there's a lot of talk about this in the media right now because there are people who have been, YouTube famous or Instagram famous who are saying, kind of going back. They were claiming to be vegan and then kind of going back on it. And a lot of people are saying that wasn't ever veganism, that was dieting, or something along those lines. So ethical veganism, I would define as having a value-based reason outside of your personal gain that is the reason for why you're vegan. Mostly focused on, could be focused on other humans' health, the psychological well-being of people who are torturing and murdering, sorry for very, very extreme words that I shouldn't use if I don't want to charge the conversation, but
no, go ahead.
But doing these things to animals, horrible psychological impacts, that they are vegan to save the planet or vegan for the animals.
All right.
So the short answer is I'm good with any reason that someone's vegan. You know, if you're avoiding animal products, great. I identify more closely with people who have a higher or a calling that isn't just for their own body, because there are so many reasons that can anchor you to the long-term vegan lifestyle. People ask, like, how do you go without cheese? Well, first of all, I don't. I eat amazing cheese. It's just all vegan.
I've read that, and I come from a country of cheese. Right?
Yeah.
I've lived in Belgium, in France, so I still have to be convinced there. But I've been doing without cheese since I moved to Japan, because Japan. And so it's not something that I was struggling with, but maybe talk about that later.
I'm gonna try to ship you, come to California, or I gotta try to ship you some Miyoko's or some Uncreamery. Those are some brands.
I think I've heard an interview of that Miyoko.
Miyoko's incredible. We've gone and worked at her sanctuary ranch and had, oh my gosh, you don't miss a thing with her cheese.
But I mean, with veganism growing in France, if anywhere in the world, you would expect that place to really see a lot of good plant-based cheese. I've tried a few. I've ordered a few. They were okay,
but not.
But I mean, I used to eat cheese at every meal, and especially and butter as well. Like, we're a huge butter family in my family, and if there's something that my siblings and my father is going to have a hard time, if ever, giving up, it's going to be those. Yeah. Right. So there's a long way before the palatability of those products out of plants is good enough for them.
I gotta get you some of this, because we've had some butter lovers who are not even close to vegan try Miyoko's butter and a spoonful and not be able to tell the difference.
All right.
So
all right.
I think we might be closer than you think.
I'll write that down in my to try thing next time I go to the States. Might not be soon, but yeah. All right.
So to come back around to that, kind of the ethical veganism. If I was avoiding butter because it's bad for my body, I might make a cheat day, right? I might have a cheat day and go, oh, but it's so delicious, I want to do it. Instead, when I see butter, my brain flashes to the videos that I've seen of babies being torn away from their moms and moms crying for their babies and just the horrific things. And so the ethical values that are really what make it so easy to say no to animal products. So easy.
I hear you when you say so easy, and I think that's what kind of written on your website as well. If I may, I think it doesn't help to say it's so easy though, because it makes it seem like you're not relatable for people who feel like it's hard.
Yeah.
And to make those people feel like it's doable, they need to be able to relate to you. Yeah. So I say the same thing as you do, right? For me, I phrase it a bit in a different manner. I say, if I choose to eat this butter right now, right? Even if I enjoy the taste because I can like ignore what my brain tells me of where it comes from, right? Even if I have the best experience in the world, I'm super happy for a few seconds, the aftermath is me not being happy with myself. So this taste experience is nothing compared to the happiness I have to with me like walking the talk and being in line with my values there, right? Mm-hmm. And you can apply that to every aspect of your life, basically. Right. And it's not possible to be perfect. But that one thing about food, it's such a habit that is not hard to take once you get used to it. And some people go directly there, some people gradually. But if you think like you do a bit of a postponed gratification thing in your brain, you're like, okay, I'm going to be happier not having eating it. If you're someone who's able to justify the eating and to not feel bad after that, I would argue that, and not to sound like I'm better than you, whatever, but I would argue you're not yet understanding the ethical problem as maybe deeply, strongly, or acutely as I feel I understand it. And so,
I love that. And I think that's really powerful stuff. I think there's a cognitive dissonance, a disconnect that a lot of people have set up in their brain because of how our society works. The animal industry wants to block us from seeing that, and we want to block ourselves. We cover our eyes. I post those videos on Facebook of what's happening, and people skip it. And I've had friends that say, hey, please don't post that. It hurts me to see it. And so that's kind of the if-then statement that I'm trying to make. If you can witness this and make that cause and effect correlation, you see, this is how my butter's made. That connection's really important for making it, as I say, easier to turn it away. You're making the connection of what you're causing.
It's based on empathy, basically, right? So if you can feel for those living beings, you will, to phrase it a bit negatively, you will feel bad if you take advantage of what everyone does, but you feel like it's not right.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you for such a complete answer. And going back to what you're doing at home in California, because that will put more like context to your trip here as well. What are you guys doing over there related to plant-based?
Yeah, related to plant-based. So a number of things. So one thing that we do in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we'll take wherever we move to, is we host monthly vegan events. So we bring a vegan food vendor, host them usually at a brewery. We've only done breweries so far. We have a dog rescue, Jake's Wish, that comes, and we'll often have another table, well, not often, but we've had another table come, like a group called Time to Be Heard, which is a wonderful elephant saving organization. So a lot of different themes there, right? Brewery, vegan food, puppies. That's a real good enticer for people to come hang out. And then other animal rights groups. And we invite everybody to come and have a social event where they get to mix, mingle, try new food. And so that's a blast. That's a really cool way. I ask people when they're coming in the door and I'm greeting them and telling them about the event, are they vegan? How did they hear about it? And a lot of times they're not vegan people. They're veg curious, or they've got, their vegan friend dragged them, or they just love beer, or they just want puppies, or whatever the case. And so it's an incredible way to destigmatize veganism, to make veganism fun, and to get people to hang out and network. So it's one thing that we do. Maybe that would turn into something bigger in the future, but that's a blast. We also do plant-based menu consulting. So we have gone into one restaurant in Los Angeles, and we helped create a vegan menu with the owners. They're wonderful people. The restaurant's name is Two Guns. They have exceptional coffee and a really great vegan menu that's put together. Really wonderful owners too. We adore them. So, and that's been really successful for them. They've had great success with their vegan power breakfast. They had an avocado toast that was vegan, but we put the word vegan on it because we wanted people to be clear without having to ask. And now it sells even more than it was before. So,
all right,
that's a little bit.
That's cool. What keeps you, if one thing, motivated every day to keep going forward?
I feel like there are so many people who have similar values, who have the same values and beliefs that we do, and haven't yet had the opportunity to kind of have the aha moment and align their behaviors with their beliefs. They think there are too many barriers, or they haven't really made the cause and effect link yet between their actions and the outcomes towards animals. And so bringing that joy and the fun that you get to experience in being a foodie and having such exceptional plant-based food is so inspiring.
All right, great. If someone comes to you and is like I'd like to be more active in everything related to plant-based lifestyle and maybe be an influencer, whether it's through menu designing or the kind of event you just talked about a few minutes ago, and basically wants to do something very similar to what you guys are doing, what would be the recommendations you would have for that person? Like, what are the things that you would tell them to avoid, the mistakes you guys made, etc.?
Yeah, so I would say, I'll start with mistakes to avoid. Mistakes to avoid, I'd say, look into how to have the tough conversations early on, because there's a lot of really good advice out there that will save you some heartache. So go to the people who are doing things like amazing vegan outreach and look at the information that they have to share about those tough conversations, so that you don't run into the painful stuff with people that you respect and care about. So some ways to get involved and get connected. So there's a really cool thing going on called the vegan flag, and we're planting the vegan flag in all the different locations that we're going to. There's a vegan flag it's got a special color. It's themed vegan flag, and they are having those in each city, in each country, as a way to unite people and say there are vegans here and we want to be heard. Get connected with Jane Unchained is a great news reporting program that we absolutely love. Start reviewing on Happy Cow so that you can share what you find in restaurants with other people. Get connected with organizations like Mercy for Animals, and that's a great way to be inspired and put your dollars towards making changes that impact animals. Get involved. Get connected with the Facebook group and the meetups that are in your city, so that you can meet people, rub elbows, and ask to help that way.
All right, cool. Very quickly, how do you see the future of like veganism or plant-based, let's say, lifestyles in, let's say, the world, or maybe if you want to talk more about California, that's fine as well. But how do you see like change grow, etc.? Because I think in your blog, on your blog, you say like it's grown from 1% to 6% of the pollution. Was it of the US? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I'd have to look it up, because I was citing a bunch of research that I was looking through.
Yeah. So but basically it grew quite a lot.
It's growing so much. It's growing so California, anecdotally, just from our experience and seeing it and traveling around. California is known as a hub for this sort of stuff. Tends to be a healthier place. People like more plants. They like to exercise more than some of the areas in the center of the country, I think. Is that fair? Anyway, we're not offending anybody in America. Anyway, so it's kind of like, oh yeah, California would, right? They like organics. They already like vegetables. It's easier. There are so many incredible vegan restaurants in California. We feel quite spoiled. We've gone to places in the middle of the country like South Dakota where I wouldn't have expected to find it, and just a short 10-minute walk from my brother's house, the home that he and his wife own, was a store that had so many vegan options. So it's growing and it's starting to thrive, and I think we're right on the brink of it really taking off and being able to find it everywhere and people really adopting it as their own.
All right. Just on top of your head, would you have like kind of a number, like a percentage of people like labeling themselves, like describing themselves as vegan, like maybe 10 years from now? What do you think that number would be?
My optimistic one, or what I really think?
Whatever you want.
So 10 years from now, so I think that we're really like I said, I really think we're at the bottom of a hockey stick, and we're about to see that exponential growth. So I think that we could in 10 years, heck, we could get to 60%.
60%
of the world. No.
Plant-based, where there's some animal products in it, maybe. I think you might be right with one condition. Like it would be like plant-based or cell-grown meat. Being a huge hit. If that happens, I can see that as I still wouldn't say 60, but why not? I wouldn't complain.
I asked if I could give an optimistic number.
Just imagine, we would become the majority.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay.
I went to an alt protein conference just a little bit ago in San Francisco, and it was incredible to see the things that they're doing with cell-based meat.
Yeah, I'm listening to everything I can get my ears on, like that crossed my path. I'm reading to a lot of that as well. It's really exciting. I don't know if it's gonna happen. And here in Japan, we don't see anything. Like there's no Impossible Burger, whatever. There's nothing. But I mean, definitely the news look pretty good, and hopefully in the next 5 years.
Have you tried Beyond yet?
No, I haven't tried any of those. Well, I mean, I'm kind of whole food plant-based now. I don't feel any attraction to the taste and the texture of meat because I still link it strongly to the animals, right? So the best thing I had was a mock meat that was like kind of a, in Japanese they call that karaage. It's kind of fried chicken, but very greasy one. I had to taste another one to be sure it wasn't, right? And then I was like, I'm uncomfortable with that food, right? Because I had been a pretty new vegan at the time, still now. But I think if that kind of option becomes more mainstream, you will go back to see that only as a taste, texture kind of food and that you might enjoy, right? But on the other hand, I really enjoy my whole food stuff. So I won't become addicted to it, I think. All right, great. I know you don't have much time left, but I would be curious to hear about what a typical day for you guys looks like back home.
Back home? Man, So I'm not sure how to answer that one because our lives have been so crazy lately. Our traditional careers are not anything that we're doing now. I actually don't like writing at all. I just have a blog because I'm trying to get information out to people. It's so funny because I know like so many people are so great at writing and I'm not, and I have a blog, so that's funny. But so, and you know, we're not photographers, we're not, our careers aren't this stuff. So before we started this crazy trip, it was kind of, you know, we'd go to the gym, go to work, come home, play with our dog, cook at home. I love to cook, so I would do a lot of cooking, meal prep, stuff like that, but.
All right.
Yeah.
So you basically envision your everyday life to be very different, or at least quite a bit different than what it had been so far until this trip once you get back?
Yeah, so I don't really know what's going to happen when we get back. It could be that we go back to our traditional careers, another company that we're running, and really get into the more corporate, taking care of things, traditional career paths. But it could be that this turns into something that we follow. We're following something right now that the universe is putting in front of us, and we don't really know the outcome, which is not my personality. I like to know and pick and choose and line it all up.
I'm the same. And I never planned to be doing what I'm doing here. So, you know, planning is good, but usually doesn't really go that way.
Yeah, what's the quote? You make plans and God laughs?
Something like that, probably. I don't know that quote, but sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe one last question here. Is there something that keeps you in, like that is very interesting to you right now that you're curious about? So if you have like 1 hour of time to kill and you're not tired, you would look up something. What is it?
That's a great question. Cell-based meat is really, really interesting right now. Cell-based meat is really interesting because there are some huge ideas with what to do with it. I was reading an article on they're using the DNA they've got from mammoth bones to make mammoth meat, which just blows my mind. I have no interest in trying it, but I'm sure somebody does.
Cell-grown meat it sounds very interesting, but also because of how they can manipulate potentially the texture, the flavor, and even like you might have heard because I used to listen to a lot of Joe Rogan podcasts when I started listening to podcasts 5 years ago. And so I've listened times and times again to stories of bear hunting and how if you eat bear meat when the bear has eaten a lot of blueberries, the meat tastes like blueberries, right? And that kind of specific thing you could replicate without obviously killing a bear,
right?
In with cell-grown meat, and it wouldn't have to be only blueberries. Like you could basically have chefs ordering specifically made meat for their dishes, and so it's called meat, but it's basically you're making a texture that has nutrients, that has a taste. So it's basically making kind of you're designing a food from nothing to something, right?
Yep.
So it sounds very interesting, even creatively speaking, and that's not talking about all the other, all the benefits for the environment, etc.
Right.
All right. Cell-grown meat, plant-based meat looks very interesting as well. Okay. If people want to reach you, ask you questions, etc., what's the best way or the best ways to do so?
Yeah, the best ways to reach me are on Instagram and on Facebook, or directly going to my blog. So my blog is forgoodnesssakes.com. It's a play on my name because my name's Seyka and my brother calls me Sakes. So for goodness sakes. And then Instagram is the same, for goodness sakes, which is more lifestyle and travel. And then my very food specific Instagram is for goodness sakes foodie. Of course, for goodness sakes is still a vegan, still has a vegan lean, but it's, it's not food being posted all the time. So those two Instagram accounts, and then for goodness sakes on Facebook as well.
All right, I'll be sure to put the links in the show notes so that people can easily find that out. Well, I think we're going to stop there because you have something to do after this.
Okay.
Enjoy some food, and it's getting a bit chilly. So thank you very much for the opportunity here and for indulging in my love of parks, let's say. So we're here in Hibiya Park and it's raining, we're under a roof here, but it's pretty cold. I still think that was the best spot for us, considering the circumstances, but thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. You're so well-spoken, ask incredible questions, so this has been really fun.
Thanks, awesome. Well, enjoy your meal and maybe see you another time.
Yeah,
bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the ciplantgo podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please think about sharing it with friends and on social media. Ciplantgo is also on Instagram and Facebook at ciplantgo. There you can have a look at the latest things going on in my plant-based life in Japan. There is also an email address, ciplantgo@gmail.com. Feel free to send me a message, whether it's to ask a question, give me suggestions for ciplantgo, or anything else. Have a great rest of the day, and until next time.